Alright, hey again everyone. So before we get into this game, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to go ahead and give you a showcase of what these decks look like. Today we've got a fight between Fighting and Colorless, so let's take a look at these deck lists. First up, we've got our Colorless deck. It's a pretty standard list, relying on powerful attackers like Snorlax, Kangaskhan, and Lugia, while being backed by an extremely powerful draw engine with your Bibarel, Squovent, and Oranguru. This deck in particular likes to try to go fast. You've got things like your Battle VIP Pass and Fan Rotom to help you set up in the early game, while then being backed up by supporter cards like Mala, as well as Guzma and Hala, to find your resources when you need them and get those out of the deck. Next up, we've got our Fighting deck. This is a deck that can both take some early KOs as well as help set up for the late game. In the early game, you can typically take KOs with powerful attackers like Okidogi, Donphan, as well as that Hisuian Arcanine. All take very little energy to get going. And then later on, you can pivot towards your Machamp, Garchomp, and finish things off with the Bloodmurn Ursaluna. But what really makes this deck stand out is the precognitive aura Lucario. You have both Garchomp and Lucario in play. Then once per turn, you can go search your deck for any card. Fighting decks often don't have a lot of draw or a lot of search, so precognitive aura is one way to help solve that problem. And there we go, there's a look at our decks. So with those out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right into this game. Alright, welcome back once more everybody. Today I got another exciting game for you. This is going to be a Fighting versus Colorless matchup. So we do have a matchup where there is going to be some weakness in play. Our Colorless player is going to be fighting kind of up against the wall here. Going to need to make sure they're playing at the top of their game if they're going to want to overcome this weakness. Most of the Pokemon that they've got will be definitely being hit for double damage by their opponent. So let's see if they can overcome that obstacle or if they'll be defeated. Looks like Colorless did mulligan one time. Fighting did mulligan one time. So Colorless does at least have that going for them. They did get one extra card. Also starting with that Lugia, which is one of the few cards that they've got that is not subject to weakness. It actually has a little bit of fighting resistance, so not a bad start. And if you are liking the content, be sure you do go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe as well. Make sure you leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think of the content. Colorless player running a pretty standard Colorless package here. They start off with the Oranguru. Great card to be able to start drawing stuff later on once your hand size gets a little bit low. Lets you draw until you've got 3 cards in hand. So not useful just yet, but player's going to start playing some cards very, very quickly. Both of these decks typically want to go relatively fast. You've got attackers that are relatively easy to set up, like this Lugia or the Snorlax that Colorless will usually attack with a lot of different times. It does look like they do use that Ultra Ball. I'm going to get that Fan Rotom. Really good add in a lot of Colorless decks. Can only be used on your first turn. But once you do, then you can go find 3 Colorless Pokemon with, I believe it's 100 HP or less. So you can find basic Pokemon, evolved Pokemon, really whatever you're wanting. Does look like our Colorless player doing a quick prize check, making sure what resources they've got access to, specifically their Pokemon, wanting to be sure they know which ones are in the prizes, which ones are not available. Actually not sure when they were doing that if I did see the Snorlax, so Snorlax may be prized. That'll make it a little bit more difficult for them to get off some attacks this game. Go ahead and use that Fan Rotom, getting Bidoof and Squovent right out of the deck. Seeing what the third option they want to grab is. Actually looks like they might go ahead and just stick with those 2. Potentially makes sense. I'm not really sure there's any other great targets for them to go ahead and grab from the deck, just based on what they already checked in there. Cyclizar has a little bit too much HP, so does the Bibarel, so cannot grab either one of those targets. But like I was saying, for the most part, this Colorless player is going to have to be dealing with the fact that his Pokemon are going to be hit for double damage. Lugia, probably about the only thing in the deck. Looks like that Fan Rotom as well. Doesn't have a fighting weakness. So these are some of the few things that they can know, well, hey, you know what? At least I don't have to worry about you hitting me not just for, the 140 damage that Okidogi is doing, but, doubling that to 240. Definitely kind of crazy damage that you can get going off from that Pokemon. So attaches that therapeutic energy. Look like they are potentially committing to this Lugia as an opening attacker before using the Squovent's Nest Dash. So we're going to put all those cards on the bottom. Going to draw one card of that. Ideally for them, they do want to be able to play this card. That way they can draw 3 off a Ringaroo, but it looks like not the case. So going to draw 2. Ooh, do draw that Turbo Energize. Unfortunately, don't have another attacker on the bench to be able to set up, so they do just pass the turn over to Fighting. Fighting looks like they've got a decent hand. Have a Dark Energy to enable that Okidogi. Definitely not ideal. Typically, you want to activate that with something like a Luminous Energy, Rainbow Energy, or some kind of other multicolor energy. That way you can get both the Fighting and the Dark. But it looks like the Fighting player disagreed with me, so they go ahead and use in. Both players shuffling those hands up and drawing new cards. This is potentially helping the Colorless player a little bit. They did only have 3 cards in hand from that Oranguru, so now they're going to have definitely a few more cards than they did previously, since players are going to draw up to 6. All right, so here we go. See what our Fighting player gets. For their sake, they're definitely hoping for some additional Pokemon that they can put down on the bench. Ooh, rough in hand. That really did absolutely nothing for them. Not even a single card they can play besides that Palpad or the Versus Seeker, though neither one of those would really be a great play, so goes ahead and passes. Not the opener that this player wanted to see, and Snorlax was in the prizes, but thankfully for our Colorless player, they did find that Hisuian Heavy Ball. Looks like they've also got Raihan, Iono, Guzman Hala. Definitely some, rough prizing. Raihan, obviously a great way to be able to power up an attacker once something's been KO'd. Guzman Hala finding you resources, that strong energy, helping you overcome, a little bit of extra damage that you might need from a tool or a Pokemon that you're not hitting quite hard enough. So our Colorless player is definitely going to want to start taking some prizes sooner rather than later to hopefully get some of those resources back out of there and into their hand. Snorlax does not yet go down on the bench, though we will likely see it. There goes the Adventure Bag. Going to be able to find a few tool cards. I think I might have seen that Turbo Energize going down. Yep, that plus the U-turn board. Making a lot of sense so far. Probably going to equip that Technical Machine to Lugia. Use that to start powering up that Snorlax. Great way to not only, get that Snorlax powered up, but continue to have this Lugia ready to go to start attacking, hopefully very soon for them as well. Does just need 1 more energy. It can do, basically that first attack for 2 energy will do damage based on how many energy are attached to both Pokemon. So as more energy is going down on this Okidogi and more energy goes down on Lugia, you will do more and more damage with it. U-turn board may stay in the hand, or we could see it go down on something like the Squovent to have a nice pivot Pokemon for if and when one of these Pokemon get KO'd. Fighting Fury Belt going down on Snorlax. U-turn board on that Squovent. Pokegear 3.0 also helping to find some additional resources in the deck, see what supporter they can grab. I think Mala and Lana or Hex Maniac was the choices. Neither one super helpful just yet. You can shut off that Okidogi's ability, which would make it a little bit easier to KO. Actually, Snorlax would be able to KO it a lot easier if you did go ahead and grab that Hex Maniac. Same time, Mala and Lana could be a nice way to either heal one of your Pokemon or switch out. Healing will probably not be the most helpful in this matchup, though, since most of their Pokemon will likely just be one-shot because of that fighting weakness. So we'll see which one of those supporters they ultimately decide to grab. I think I actually must have missed which one they decided to grab. That might have been off camera, so unfortunately we don't get to see that, but it does look like it's just going to go right back in, even if they did grab a supporter. So Squovent's Nest Dash being used. 1 card being grabbed off the top. Seeing what they might have in the discard. So I wanted to grab something to be able to get some resources back from the discard. Maybe either some Pokemon or energy or something like that. Ooh, wow, that was a fantastic card to draw off of that Squovent. So that makes you discard the rest of your hand. Then you get to go find 2 cards from your deck. I actually remember if it's 2 of any cards or 2 trainers specifically. Looks like the player is eyeing up that buy barrel, so it's probably just 2 of any cards. Definitely has been a minute since I have read that one specifically, but definitely a very powerful card if you have a low hand size, or in this case, no hand size. So again, we'll see what they decide to grab. It does look like they are eyeing up potentially that town map as well as that trainer's mail. So now Battle Compressor going to the bottom. So it looks like it is town map and Battle Compressor. Seems like there's some resources in the deck that they want to go ahead and discard and make those maybe a little bit more readily available. So now I'm going to be able to easily grab any of those resources from the prizes once they do start taking them. Goes ahead and use that Battle Compressor, getting that Battle VIP Pass out of the deck. Definitely do not need that in there anymore. See what else they ultimately decide to discard. Could definitely see them potentially discarding an energy. That way, later on, they will be able to make that Raihan guaranteed to be able to go off. Raihan does require at least one basic energy in the discard because you have to be able to attach energy before you can use it. So there does go a fire energy. Looks like potentially just those two resources, unless I did miss one of them. So now they do have one completely useless card out of the deck, as well as an energy setup. See if there's anything else they're wanting to do before they go ahead and use this Turbo Energized. Still have not used that Oranguru, so going to be able to draw 3 cards once this cut finishes. Finds Tag Call, Kangaskhan, and Parallel City. Parallel City not doing them anything at the moment since Fighting can't seem to find any of their Pokemon. So far this game is definitely looking a little bit rough for our Fighting player. They can definitely pretty easily turn things around if they can start finding some of their resources. A lot of their Pokemon don't take very many energies to get going. But Turbo Energize, putting 2 energies on the Snorlax, the clock is definitely ticking to make that happen. Not going to have very many more turns where they can just sit around and wait. Colorless player is definitely putting on the brakes a little bit. They can see that their opponent is not doing very much, so slowing down a little bit, make sure they're getting set up, not rushing into things too much. They realizing they don't really have any reason to just rush in this situation. Phanpy, not a bad top deck considering what else is in the hand. Unfortunately, because of this dark energy, this fighting energy is not really helping all that much. Gets you slightly closer to being able to attack, but not too much. Really forced to use that Versus Seeker to use in once more. Gonna make both players shuffle hands back into those deck and redraw some cards. Fighting is hoping for a lot better luck this time. Last time in did them absolutely no favors, gave them a miserable hand that they could do nothing with. Ultimately, we're forced to use that Versus Seeker, really kind of waste that valuable resource early on play that they definitely did not want to do. We'll see if they get anything better off of these next 6 cards. There's a lot riding on this draw. So we'll see what they get. Colorless already sitting pretty well. Ooh, do find that Hisuian Growlithe as well as the Hisuian Arcanine. So next turn to be able to set up that attacker. Just need something damaged on the bench. Also have the Brooklet Hill. Pokemon starting to go down on the bench for a fighting player. Getting that Riolu potentially. So this is a build that runs the Riolu as well as, the Lucario with Precognitive Aura. So for anybody that doesn't know, if you have a Garchomp in play as well as that Precognitive Aura Lucario, then once per turn, you can go search your deck for any card. Not a combo that every single fighting deck runs, can be a little bit slow, but if you do manage to set that up, it just gives you access to so much of your deck. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. If you play, standard, you've got quick search with Pidgeot, basically just a Pidgeot sitting on your bench that you can do whatever you want with every single turn. Definitely makes it a lot easier to find what you need when you need it, especially in a format like GLC where you do just have single cards. Finding that Machop as well. This is, again, another build that runs that Machamp, so kind of a little bit more of a late game style fighting deck with those couple of stage 2s. Do go a little bit slower with this deck. It's not one of those super fast all stage 1 deck like where you've got the Excadrill, Arcanine, as well as Donphan. You can see that the player does have some of those in the deck, but kind of taking a little bit of a longer look at the game. So Fighting Fury Belt definitely going down on Ogie Dogie. This guy has a lot of HP, sitting at, I believe, 270, I think, if I'm doing my math correctly. So quite a big boy there. Definitely won't go down anytime soon. Actually, great, kind of a good play on the part of our colorless player, our fighting player, because if they do get some damage from this Lugia, obviously not going to get KO'd, and then they can retreat potentially, go up with that Arcanine, and maybe take a KO. Fortunately, because of the fighting resistance, it wouldn't be against this Lugia, but if they did have some other resources in their hand to maybe like boss up that Snorlax or something like that, they could again potentially take that KO. Suiting Arcanine, again, if you're not familiar, is able to attack for free, but it only does its full damage if one of your bench Pokemon has damage on it. So again, it's really not a bad thing for this Okidogi to maybe take a little bit of damage. It can definitely afford it. Muscle Band going down on this Lugia, so it's hitting fairly hard right now. Since there are 4 energies currently in play, believe it is 20 times, so that would be about 80 damage or so. Definitely not nearly enough to take out this Okidogi. Mala also going down for our colorless player, so they get to find 2 cards from their deck. They make that choice very quickly. Looks like our player knew exactly what they wanted. So one of the things that's just crazy about these colorless decks, you put 2 cards on top with something like this Mala, then you use your Squovent, put your hand on the bottom, draw one of those cards, play it right off the top, and then use something like a Rangaroo. Wouldn't be surprised if one of these is Bibarel. Usually a great way to be able to get that into play if you don't already have it. Again, just use Nest Dash, put those cards on bottom, draw that one off that Nest Dash, immediately evolve your Bidoof into Bibarel, which allows you to draw 3 full cards from a Rangaroo. One of those cards, again, will probably be a playable card since you put the other, that second card on top as well. So it does look like what our colorless player is doing. So going to draw 3 cards. Looks like one of those is Parallel City. Going to be able to bounce this stadium and also limit the additional bench side of that fighting player. So no more basics from that Brooklet Hill. Our fighting player doesn't have to discard any Pokemon just yet, but they cannot put down any more until they find another stadium, and then draws some additional cards off of that Bibarel. Definitely showing off the power of colorless. Start hitting for 100 damage, it looks like, so a little bit more than I was calculating. I was just a little bit off. Yeah, sorry, it's 4 times 20 plus 20. That does make sense, actually. So draws for turn. Not a great-looking hand still. Do have that... Karina. Great card for our fighting player. Lets you find a fighting Pokemon as well as an item card. Basically exactly like Irida, which water uses all the time. Water instead, though, obviously can find a water Pokemon rather than a fighting one. So getting that Donphan. That will be our fighting Pokemon. So what item do they want in this situation? Oh, Professor's Letter, gonna be able to let them attack with this Okidogi. Okidogi, I believe, would be taking the KO, especially because of that Fighting Fury Belt. Does have enough damage after getting those 2 fighting energies. It's going to be able to attach 1 more energy on Okidogi, take the KO this turn. Okidogi will still, again, be in a great situation. Then you can, again, potentially retreat with it, start using something like that Growlithe, maybe use that Donphan, whichever one you think is better for you in this situation. Donphan does put additional damage counters on all of your Pokemon, so it's probably not the ideal one. Might want to go with the Growlithe, since you do already have that set up. So energy goes down on the Okidogi. Suing Arcanine, evolving. Proud Fangs, again, would be active as long as this Okidogi is not KO'd. Can use that for its full effect, 120 damage for no energy. And then the Okidogi takes the KO because of that Fighting Fury Belt, despite that resistance. 1 prize taken, looks like it is a Marnie, so going to be able to find new hand. Not a terrible choice, or not a terrible card to get off the prizes with this hand. Can potentially attach that 1 energy to that Donphan, and then go ahead and use that Marnie and find some additional cards. Gosh, man, it's one of those things, though, these hand disruptions that people play in decks just don't hurt colorless nearly as much as they hurt other decks. Because, again, you've got that Squovent, a Rangaroo, and Bibarel. You don't really care if you're put on low hand size. You can always easily draw into plenty more cards every single turn. definitely the power of Colorless. You see like 6, 7, 8, 9 cards potentially, depending on how many you're playing and drawing each turn. Can be absolutely wild. So in this situation, Colorless does need another energy before they can attack with this Snorlax. If they do attack with the Snorlax, yeah, it's still actually, is that enough for KO? So you've already got 100 damage, you're putting on another 180, so that would be just enough to get the KO, especially since you got that Fighting Fury belt on, you're actually doing 190. So they can manage to get a KO here with Snorlax if they do have one energy. It's pretty unlikely that they wouldn't be able to find one again with this powerful draw engine. So that would turn off that Hisuian Arcanine. But again, we know that there is at least one fighting energy in the hand because of that Professor's Letter. So our fighting player can still attach to Donphan, go up with that and just attack. Opting to put the energy on the Fan Rotom. So interesting. I wonder if they... It doesn't look like they've got a way to deal with this dark energy. So they can't do enough damage. Oh no, they can actually. I'm sorry. They have 270 HP. So no, what am I talking about? You need to, yeah, that Fan Rotom is definitely not enough damage to be able to take the KO. I'm not sure what they're thinking here. So Quick Ball discarding that Arven. Gonna find another basic Pokemon. Looks like eyeing up that Cyclizar. Though Kangaskhan is one of the other options they could go with. They are opting for Cyclizar. Again, not totally sure what the play is here. Maybe they're just trying to preserve the Snorlax for later. Worried about the counter KO. Again, they do know that their opponent has a fighting energy in hand. So if they go up with Snorlax here, take the KO, Donphan then just immediately comes up and takes the KO on that Snorlax because of the weakness. It usually only hits for 120, but 120 times 2, that's 240. That's plenty of damage even with that Fighting Fury belt. So that might be what's on the mind here, but I'm not really sure how attacking with the Rotom helps too much. But it does look like that is what they want to do. Ooh, they do have X-Maniac. There we go. There's what the missing piece was. Suddenly the play making a lot more sense. Okidogi's ability is shut off. It only has 70 HP left because of this Hex Maniac. I was very, very confused by that play, but our Colorless player had this in the bag. They knew exactly what they needed to do. It's going to be able to get a KO on this Okidogi while just putting in a Fan Rotom, which, hey, that's not a card. You already got their main use out of it, got that Fan Call off. So, you don't really care if this Phantom Rotom goes down. Preserving your Snorlax. Player just doing the math real quick. He's like, wait a second, I thought I should have plenty of HP, but the ability again is off, so that is just enough damage, even with the Fighting Fury belt. So that goes down. Looks like gonna grab the Raihan. Definitely the smart choice here. Fortunately for them, they don't know that their opponent has Marnie, so gonna lose that resources to the bottom of the deck. So Donphan does go up, energy going on. Very smart play again from our Colorless player. They remembered that that energy was still in hand from that Professor's Letter, so they were looking for a way to be able to take the KO without losing their Snorlax next turn. Ooh, Boss's Orders with the Trainer's Mail, using that, getting the Snorlax. Colorless tried so hard to make sure this exact play was not about to happen, and Trainer's Mail comes in clutch, finds that Boss's Orders. Gonna be able to take out the Snorlax this turn. Again, it's doing it 240 damage with that Earthquake due to the weakness. Weakness, again, coming in clutch. One of the reasons why the weakness matchups can be very difficult, you're put in situations like this where you're having to deal with the fact that your Pokemon are just getting KO'd a lot easier than they otherwise would be. So the only downside to that play is it does mean that you left your opponent with the Raihan in hand, so you know they've got access to that this turn. If they've got a way to recover that Snorlax, heck, you could just even set that guy right back up and take a KO. If Double Turbo was in hand, you'd be able to easily use Raihan, get an energy from the discard, find a double energy from the deck, and then attach that. Fortunately for our Colorless player, they don't have something like their Rescue Stretcher in hand, so can't go for that play. They might be able to dig for it with something like their Squovent, a Rangaroo, and Bibarel. See if they opt for that play or if they go with something different. Did see Guzma in hand. Really not any amazing targets. They could take down something like the Machop and use their Rotom to do that. Does look like they are debating doing that. So goes ahead and Guzma. Up comes the Machop as well as the Rotom. Rotom will be able to take a KO, but almost certainly going to go ahead and use that Nest Dash here. Is a little bit unfortunate. They are going to have to sacrifice the Raihan if they do that, but otherwise the hand's not looking great. So debating if that's what they want to do. Does ultimately call for the Nest Dash, hand going to the bottom of the deck. Raihan, being lost just from their own plays. Can't disagree with this. That Machamp can definitely become a complete nightmare, especially with the Hex Maniac already down in the discard. Does find the Trainer's Mail off the top with that Squovent, so going to be able to get one trainer from here. Looks like they're debating that Versus Seeker. It's like Escape Rope is none of one of the options, but ultimately opts for Versus Seeker. I'm going to shuffle that back up, so Raihan getting right back into the deck. Maybe you might even find it off either Bibarel or Rangaroo. It's definitely the ideal of what you want to see. Anytime you're using Nest Dash, if you can ideally play that card, you do, unfortunately in this case, still have the Verse Seeker in hand, which you can't get rid of. So it does find the Revive, going to get that Snorlax back. Looking at what resources have already been lost to the discard. Going to be able to find some additional cards now off of this Bibarel. I believe it's 3 more, since they've got 2 cards left in hand. Didn't see anything too amazing get found from there. So they do have Birdkeeper. Could be well, at least Desperation, draw some cards. That Versus Seeker definitely a little bit better for them. But unfortunately, they didn't find anything to help reset up another attacker. So this could be the chance for Fighting to maybe find a way to come back into this game. They are going to lose their Machop this turn. That puts them back on even prizes with their opponent. It'll be 4 versus 4. So powerful energy is going down on the Cyclozar. So they did have 1 energy in hand at the very least. So they are starting to set up some kind of an attacker. Chop goes down. 1 more prize taken. Goes ahead and it gets that draw. It's that Palpat again. Gibble going down. That guy can maybe start being more helpful later on in the game and goes ahead and uses Marnie. So both players going to shuffle those hands, put them on the bottom of the deck. Then they will draw 5 cards for our player that played Marnie and 4 cards for our colorless player. So again, this could still be the chance for our Fighting player to start coming back into this game. Gosh, they really are just not getting any luck off of their hand reset cards. They did find an energy to put down on the Gibble, and they have their Garchomp in hand, but they have to take the KO this turn. They can't go up with something like Ascension. So they do some damage to their own Pokemon because of that Donphan, but they do take another prize. We're sitting at 3 versus 4 now. Squovent, again, just coming right back up, but of course it's just acting as a pivot Pokemon. That's kind of crazy. I feel like that hand is almost identical to a hand that our colorless player had before. We know that had the Luxurious Cape, Scoop Up Net, and the Reset Stamp. Sometimes that happens. They don't have a ton of resources left in the deck. So when you're drawing 4 cards, it's not unlikely to start seeing a lot of the same ones over and over again. But on this turn, they need to find one of their double energies if they want to attack with the Cyclozar this turn. We haven't seen any of those come into play, but they're ultimately attaching the double turbo. If they let go of this card, then they might be committing to finding their Raihan, potentially. I can't think what else they'd be going for if they ultimately decide to go for this play. So they are debating it pretty hard. They're not sure if that's what they want to do. So yeah, I'm guessing they're committing to finding their Raihan this turn. It's the only way that they can still attack and do any kind of significant damage. They could go up with Cyclozar and do 50 with Ram, but I don't really know what that's doing for them. So, like I said, hoping to find this Raihan here. They know they don't have a lot of resources left in the deck. The odds are in their favor, probably, to find it. Not sure what they grabbed. Looks like they're thinking about it a little bit before they go ahead. Ooh, did put an energy aside. Did they find the Raihan off the top? Think they might have. Oh, nope. So using that Oranguru? Oh, they did know. They did find the Raihan off the top. Gosh, absolutely crazy. And this was probably a calculated play from our colorless player. They knew how many cards were left in the deck, and they knew there wasn't that many, so there was a good chance for them to find the Raihan. Committing to this play was not super risky, most likely in this situation. So getting that energy attached, going to get it one card they want from the deck. Looks like they are debating something like that Luxurious Cape, maybe the reset stamp. Reset stamp would put their opponent down to only a few cards. They do still have the Arcanine that can just go up and take a KO if they don't buff this Snorlax's HP, though. At the same time, if they put the Luxurious Cape on and their opponent finds a Muscle Band or some other way to buff the damage, I believe that still would be a KO. Buff you up to 140. That times 2, that's still 280, which would be plenty to still... Actually, I'm sorry, it just wouldn't be quite enough because Snorlax has 150 base. So Luxurious Cape would protect you from that Arcanine. I'm not sure if that's the card that they grabbed. They do retreat. Go up with Snorlax. Gonna be able to take a KO on Donphan this turn. They can grab Special Charge to be able to potentially shuffle in some special energies next turn. Players debating what they want to grab next. They do have their Raihan in hand, so they can put another energy onto this Gible potentially. Find a card from their deck. Do find the Level Ball. Not a bad thing to find off the top. Potentially find, I believe the Gabite has just a low enough HP to be able to grab, or might even find the Riolu instead. Play for the longer game and maybe go for that precognitive aura. Might be what they need for the long run to ultimately win this game. So they do use the Raihan. Energy going down on the Gible. Let's see what card they grab. Fortunately, it looks like they're doing that off camera, so we might not be able to see what they ultimately get. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't know what that card is either. It's being hidden from us just like it is from their opponent. I could definitely see it potentially being the Gabite. They do have the Garchomp in hand, so it would be another attacker that they'd be able to set up next turn, just by evolving. Ooh, going Rare Candy, even smarter. Don't know why I didn't think of that one. So going into the Garchomp off of that Rare Candy, now has another attacker in play. This one's got the ability to discard an energy to be able to do some extra damage. I'm sorry, that's just part of the attack that you can do. So does use that Proud Fangs, takes another KO due to the weakness. Weakness really coming clutch for our fighting player. They did not have a strong showing just because really their Marnies and their ends were just doing them absolutely no favors at all. But that is the power of weakness. It can help you out in matchups where you're otherwise struggling. Fighting as a type is definitely, in general, not quite as strong as Colorless, so I don't really think it's that unfair to be able to have that little bit of advantage. So it does have the double Colorless energy to be able to put onto Cyclizar. As long as they can play a supporter this turn, then they will be able to take the KO. Because I believe the second attack is 70 damage plus 70 more if you played a supporter this turn. That is assuming I'm remembering that correctly, but I believe that it is. It has been a minute since I've read that attack specifically. Looks like our player might be looking at using, going with that Rescue Stretcher. So shuffling 3 Pokemon back into the deck. Not shuffling just yet, so they might have a way to be able to grab those back out. But again, they will need to do a shuffle before they do anything. So want to use their special charge before they do this. Makes sense. So special charge, putting the double turbo as well as the therapeutic energy back in. This turn they're definitely hoping to find that Snorlax again, and then they want the resources back in the deck to be able to set it up with more energy later on. They still need to get through 3 prizes. Looking like they're debating bumping their own parallel city, so does have that Artisan now in play. Go ahead and can find that Snorlax from the deck. They know their opponent doesn't really have very many basics left either, so it's not really hurting them too much to go ahead and put this down. Is discarding Tag Call with Cynthia and Caitlin. Not really much point to that card anymore. You know Guzma and Hall is in the prizes. Mal and Lana is probably not an ideal card that you want to grab, so who cares? Go ahead and get rid of that guy. Make sure your Raihan is available for you in an upcoming turn. Then draw 3 cards. So Lugia going down, then using that Artisan. Snorlax down on the bench as well. Lots of attackers to potentially choose from. Really could see our player going either way. Lugia, again, does have that resistance, so it's the tankier Pokemon as far as an option for them. You know, Snorlax is very easy to KO with just about anything that their opponent can bring up. But Lugia, especially with something like a Luxurious Cape, could be a lot more difficult to knock out. So ultimately retreating, going up into the Cyclizar, still needing to take a KO this turn, so going to go ahead and do that. Looks like thinking about that Iono, debating if they want to limit their opponent's resources next turn. The reality is they're probably more likely to use something like Raihan anyway, so it's kind of like, you know, am I going to need this, if not next turn, the turn afterwards? So it's really probably what they're thinking in their head at the moment. Ultimately opting for the Iono. Fighting draws, find something they like. So it's Pokegear 3.0. We'll see if they get a good supporter off of these 7 cards. Definitely coming down to the wire for both of our players. Looks like Artisan, or I'm sorry, Arvin and Grant are the choices. Grant can help them do a little bit more damage, but Arvin probably a little bit more helpful here. Could potentially get some cards to recover some of the Pokemon from their discard. That might be the play with that Arvin. Grant, they don't really need the extra damage. So again, Arvin just feels like it makes more sense in this situation. The only argument I think for Grant is, again, if you are thinking towards that Lugia, not sure exactly how the math might work out and whether or not you would need it. So it does look like the player is debating Arvin. Ultimately, that is the choice. See if they go ahead and play that, or if they've got some other things they want to do first. So it does use Artisan. Going to find a basic Pokemon without a rule box. Players just double checking what they're allowed to grab. Pretty much in this format, just reads, grab a basic Pokemon. You don't have any rule box Pokemon, so that's not really a worry. Again, I'm not sure if they really have any though, so if they were planning on getting something to recover Pokemon from the discard, probably would have been a good idea to play that Arvin first. But again, we'll see if maybe there's something that I'm forgetting about that they've got in this list. So it does look like Blood Mercury is a potential option. But ultimately, I might have just been checking the deck for what resources they've got left. So Arvin does go down. Opting for, Ultra Ball. So Ultra Ball is going to let them get that precognitive aura online. Can just go ahead and find that Lucario off of it and the Focus Band. Unfortunately, the Focus Band not super helpful since they already have damage on that Garchomp. Could potentially use it on that Riolu to buy them a turn. Debating if they want to discard that Machoke and that Luxurious Cape. So they do ultimately opt for that. That was a tough choice there. Luxurious Cape could have protected their Garchomp, but at the same time, if they can do enough damage, then it could just put them at risk. So Lucario going down does have that precognitive aura online. Going to be able to start searching for 1 card per turn. Unfortunately for them, since we know that the Raihan is in hand, next turn, if they take a KO, their opponent can just guarantee take a knockout. So ultimately discarding that Focus Sash with the Earthen Vessel, finding 2 energies off of it. So it does look like they're committing to the Lucario as potentially their last attacker for the game. They did find that Ursaluna. So it looks like that was probably the card that they grabbed with the Precognitive Aura, committing to that as maybe their last attacker for the game instead. Gonna take the KO from that Garchomp, drawing one more prize, just one prize remaining. Ooh, this is definitely looking a little scary for our colorless player. That was definitely a risky play on the part of Fighting. Since Garchomp is definitely going down this turn because of this Raihan, they're not going to have access to Precognitive Aura. So if they don't have the ability to find an energy next turn, they're really just relying on pure luck of what they can top deck. So unless they already had one in hand, that was almost guaranteed a double energy that they grabbed with that Raihan. Is using that Artisan to get the Fan Rotom back out of the deck as well. So they did grab a double energy, putting that twin energy on to Snorlax. Going to be able to... There's Luxurious Cape as well. Going to take a KO on Garchomp this turn. That will mean Blood Moon Ursaluna, even with weakness, won't be hitting quite hard enough to take a KO. They're going to need both the Field Blower as well as an energy. Which, next turn, they've got the one card they drew off the prizes, one card off the top. It's not looking super great for our Fighting player. You know, luck is really going to need to be on their side here. We have absolutely no clue what that one card they have in hand is. Colorless continue to just draw a lot more cards from their draw engine, so they're still sitting in a very comfortable position next turn. Even if Snorlax, I mean, I guess if their opponent does find a way to take a KO, then they just lose. But it's looking less and less likely at the moment. So Guzma as well as one other card going back into the deck with that Palpad. Player just, again, trying to set up for another turn if they do have one after this. They're definitely planning as if they're going to. I think really the ideal for our Fighting player is, I don't think they've used their Guzma yet, so maybe there was some kind of crazy luck where the card they just drew off the prizes was Guzma, so they can go up Lucario, top deck that energy, and then just Guzma something else up, take the KO, and win the game. But we'll see if that happens or not. I seriously doubt that they'll have that kind of crazy luck. Snorlax with 250 HP going up, thumping Snore, taking the KO. It is asleep, so if it doesn't wake up, but it does, that 25% chance pays off. So going up with the Blood Moon Ursaluna, it comes down to this top deck. They top deck the Guzma. So what else is the other card in hand? Looks like they're thinking, you know, maybe looking at the stall play. It's just a Buddy Poffin, so not helpful at all. Really the only option in this situation is just to stall since that Snorlax woke up. But we do still know that Scoop Up Net is in the deck for Colorless, so if they've got it in hand, they can just scoop this Bibarrel up and win next turn. If they don't have it in hand, there's a good chance they can just draw into it with their crazy draw engine. But it looks like they do. I think I just saw the Scoop Up Neck in hand. So looks like probably last play they're doing, retreating Lucario. There goes the Scoop Up Net. Snorlax going up. KO, thumping Snore. Colorless able to figure out a way to work around that weakness. Just a little bit too powerful. Fighting couldn't find what they needed off of their cards. Very unfortunate. But good game for both of our players.